Hello students, in this video I will show you how to solve number 13. I know many of you are confused by the concept of having a table. So I will explain what the table means and I'm going to solve this specific problem. So going to the table here, we have 976 pedestrian deaths in total. So if you add all of those deaths, it's gonna add up to 976 pedestrian deaths. Some of those pedestrian deaths involved pedestrians who are either intoxicated, so those are all of the pedestrian deaths that involve pedestrians that are intoxicated. And there are some pedestrians that are not intoxicated. So this column which says no represents all of the pedestrian that involve pedestrians that were not intoxicated. And then there is the driver, whether the driver was intoxicated or the driver was not intoxicated. So, for example, if you look at this row right here, this row involves all of the pedestrian deaths that involve a driver that was intoxicated because it says yes here. And this row right here has all of the pedestrian deaths that involved a driver that was not intoxicated. So in this row right here, although the driver was not intoxicated, some of the pedestrians were intoxicated in fact. So hopefully this is going to clarify how you read this table, specific table. Now let's look at the actual question. If two different pedestrian deaths are randomly selected, find the probability that both involve drivers that were not intoxicated. So we want to look at all of the pedestrian deaths that involve the driver that was not intoxicated. That means we're looking at the last row right here. And we're looking at those two numbers right here. Now we're selecting two different pedestrian deaths. And we want to find the probability that both of them involve drivers that were not intoxicated. So in this case, we want to find the probability that the first pedestrian death we select involves a driver that was not intoxicated, and the second pedestrian death we select is going to involve a driver that was not intoxicated. Since we said and in this case, we're going to multiply the two probabilities together. So we will find the first one and the second one, and then we're going to multiply both of them together. Let me head to an Excel sheet to explain better. So I went ahead and copied and pasted the table right here. Now I'm looking for all of the pedestrian deaths that involved a driver that was not intoxicated. So I'm looking at the last row right here. And I'm going to say, I'm going to add those two numbers. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to say the first number plus the second number, or I could use the sum function to do that. So the sum of that was 848 pedestrian deaths out of 976 pedestrian deaths involved a driver that was not intoxicated. So to answer that question, we want two probabilities. The first one, the first choice, how many pedestrian deaths that involved a driver that was not intoxicated? We just computed that, so that is this number, 848. Out of how many pedestrian deaths in total? Out of 976 in total. This was our first pick. Our second pick, we will say, now that we picked the first one out of the pedestrian deaths, and it was involving a driver that was not intoxicated, how many more options do I have left from the number that I have? The answer is, since you selected the first one, you had 847 remaining. So we subtract one from here. Out of how many pedestrian deaths in total, in this case, we're selecting? Since we selected our first one, so we have only 975 left to choose from. So I subtracted that from the total number of pedestrian deaths. So this is my second probability. And the answer to that question is to multiply both of them together, since we are working on both of them. So selecting the first one and the second one. And when I say and, I mean multiplication. If it was or, then it will be an addition of probabilities. But now I know I'm going to multiply both of them. So I'm going to say the first one times the second one. And that should be the answer. And if you notice, the answer has a percentage symbol. That means I will need to multiply my answer by 100, and I have to round to one decimal place. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say this number times 100, and then I'm going to round to one decimal, so 75.5 is the answer. So I'm going to go here and say 75.5, and that is the probability that I'm looking for. I hope this video clarified something for you. If you have more questions, please keep them coming, and I will be more than happy to answer them for you. And I wish you the best of luck.